All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our webinar today, Creating Customer-Centric Experiences, How to Make Your Brand Inclusive to Your Audience. I'm Tessa Barron, and I lead marketing at On24. And On24 is a company that powers the software to create amazing interactive webinar and content experiences. We're powering the webinar that you're in today. And because it is powered by On24, it's a little bit different than the typical webinar experience. We are actually inviting you to be a part of today's conversation in a few ways. So starting on the left, you'll see a Q&A button along the bottom of your screen. That's your opportunity to ask us questions. Get our tips on any of the topics we discuss. We'd love to hear from you. We also have included an idea widget. That's the light bulb that you see, that button on the bottom of your screen, and that's an opportunity to share your ideas around brands that inspire you. So check that out. And then finally, we also would love for you to amplify this conversation on Twitter. So there's a tweet widget, and it's on the right-hand side of your screen. So all you have to do is click on that, share any of the insights that you get or thoughts you have on the conversation, and it will automatically post on Twitter using the hashtag own it. So I'm really excited to be having this conversation because I have some amazing marketing experts here with me today, and amazing women marketing experts, which goes along with our theme of diversity and inclusion and how that is a part of your brand. So I'd love for them to introduce themselves. Katie?
Thank you, Tessa. And so super excited to be here today. I'm Katie Dom. I lead communications at People.ai. People.ai is, we're focused on transforming your go-to-market operations with data. So I've been here for about just over 6 months. Before that, I worked at a variety of startups and bigger tech companies. And I'm responsible for PR, AR, some social media, or exec comms, and then everything else that you do at a startup.
And hello, everybody. My name is Marni Reid. I work for a company called PFL. Been with the company for 17 years, which is crazy to think that it's been that long. But PFL is a marketing technology company that provides sales enablement and marketing automation services and solutions, which include printing, mailing, and fulfillment services.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stacy Dolchin. I am the Director of Corporate Marketing here at Bizzabo. I've been here about 8 months now, but I've been in B2B tech space for about 8 years. Bizzabo unleashes the power of professional events to create rewarding and impactful experiences by providing an end-to-end event solution.
Hello, everyone. I'm Caroline, and I work at RollWorks on content and messaging. What we do is we enable teams to close deals faster and generate more revenue using ABM. And as an advocate of ABM and previously running programs at other startups before this, it's just great to help other marketers close deals faster. So that's what we do.
Great. Thanks, Caroline. And so first, we wanted to start off by just explaining why we're even doing this webinar. You may have noticed when you entered the lobby for today's experience and the opening slide had the words own it, own it, own it. And that's because all of us collaborated recently on an event called Own It, which was due to the fact that we all got together and realized that there was a gap in our industry's conversation, the industry being technology and specifically technology for marketers. And we thought we should do something about it. And so we built an event from scratch called Own It that was dedicated to women who are navigating all the change and transformation that their marketing leadership role requires. And it was a huge success. It was not only a success because, you know, we did it, and it was a wonderful experience, but also because of the reaction that we got from our audience and the insights that we learned. And we thought we should share this and do it in a bigger way than just a physical environment provides. So we have some marketing lessons to share and from Own It. And that's what we'll be talking through today. Marni, I know you were amazed by what happened with Own It, and I think it was a great takeaway for all of us just to understand how we could create an impact that carried on further than just the event itself.
I agree. It was such an overwhelming response that we got from the audience. It was very inspiring to be walking around such an amazing group of people at so many different levels. And so, you know, age levels, experience levels was just very inspiring. And I think it just reinforced the need for us to continue this conversation about diversity in our marketing, diversity in our workplace. It was pretty awesome. One of my customers who was actually on a panel discussion there, you can see some of the feedback that we got from people on LinkedIn. She just said, I was overwhelmed by the environment that we were created. So very cool.
Yeah, it is amazing. I think when you're able to combine both a business objective with something that is right and make your brand not only be just representative of the company, that it is the emblem of, but also it also is personifying your values. So that's exactly what we're going to talk about, is then how you can do that with your brand, and some tactical tips that we have for you to do that across channels. And then some brands that we admire. So who's doing it right? Who's making diversity a part of their brand's DNA, not seeing them as mutually exclusive, but as putting their values out there in the same way that they would market their solutions. So let's take a step back. Why is customer experience even important, and what the heck does diversity have to do with it? Well, as marketers, we are responsible for the experience that our company delivers to our customers and our prospects. And that starts at the first touch. That starts at the first time that they're visiting your website and understanding what that company is all about. The values you stand for are often more important than the product that you're selling. And with millennials on the rise, it's becoming even more critical to stand for something and have a point of view that millennials will agree with and believe in before you can even start to talk to them about the solution you offer. But unfortunately, we may say experience matters, but on the whole, there is a gap. And Stacey, I think you have a pretty alarming statistic that proves that.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, brands are still really lagging when it comes to inclusion. And according to our 2018 Gender and Diversity Report here at Bizzabo, almost 70% of professional event speakers are male. So we still have a long way to go to get to that 50-50 split.
Yeah, I think it is just alarming in a way, and that is just speaking to gender. But you know, I think that cuts across. We typically, I think, are used to seeing a C-level male executive take the stage, and that's just representative of, I think, a bigger industry trend, and something that we can all do through our daily actions, our daily marketing activities to start to change. And Own It was one of the initiatives that we're driving, and we want to make sure that everyone is moving in that direction. So how do you do that? How do you make diversity a part of your brand's DNA? We've broken it down into a few steps, and so it really starts with knowing your audience. Katie, can you share how to do that? Oh, Katie, I think you're on mute.
You're right. I was on mute. So I was chiming in, but I think one of the things we start with is that the point you made earlier about how our audience is changing. As marketers and as communications people, we really focus on being perception driven and audience focused. And so making sure that we're aligning with the perceptions our audiences have and who is behind those perceptions is one thing that's been really important. The other thing that we see at People.ai specifically is we're all about data, and about clean, good data at that. And so what we're able to see with the data is having that at the table really starts the foundation for the conversation around being inclusive, what your audience wants, what your customers want, and how you measure from there. And I think being able to view that in aggregate also helps to remove bias. You don't know who exactly is producing those numbers or who is producing that data. So you're able to take a better point of view as well.
Yeah, so I imagine that goes into getting qualitative data that is indicative of who someone is as an individual, and not just going off of what your database says based upon, binary data that you can fit inside of a form fill. Stacey, I know you at Bizzabo it's interesting the way that you guys have been able to collect different data points into your database to get a better view of who your audience and entire network is.
Yeah. So here at Bizzabo, when you add a speaker to your event page, or when someone RSVPs for an event, they can include a prefix, so the Mr., Mrs., Miss, and then we're able to use that data, and we can show how many people at your event are female versus male, as well as your speaker breakout.
It's interesting because when you think about it, we really have no way to view even the gender of our audience. So start to think about getting some multidimensional aspects into your database. I know, Marni, there's also the point on just even where people are located, right?
Exactly. And if you're looking at all of the different pieces of data, I mean, you are taking into consider, the age, the gender, as you guys have mentioned. You look at people's profession, but you also want to look at their physical environment. So their geographic region and potential preferences around that.
Yeah, it really does. It really does vary. Just even you can't talk to someone about weather and have it be a snowstorm and say that the weather is great outside. So I think that, trying to build a human view is really important because data is what rules our ability to market to someone. But it's also about how we represent ourselves and how we represent our brand. So at On24, we've done a few things to try and represent a more human brand, a more accessible brand, but also make it reflect the people who are our customer base, because they really are our brand. We, for our website, instead of using stock photos, decided to hold a photo shoot with our customers. We invited them to our office. They felt like models for the day. Got really silly, but and that was awesome. And we got great images. But I think beyond that, it helps people immediately understand not only what our brand is about, but what it would be for them to be a part of it. And it's really a part of it doesn't mean just being a user. It means being a part of what we stand for. So this was just one idea that we did. And I know, Caroline, you guys have been doing some really cool stuff at RollWorks to also inject more humanity and authenticity into the images that you put out in the market.
Yeah, definitely. To piggyback on what you're talking about, a big part for us is to put ourselves in our audience's shoes. For example, like you've always gone to a website and you've seen a stock photo of 5 men in tight suits sitting at a table and you don't per se relate to it in case maybe that's your industry. But we really tried to look at who our audience is, who we're really trying to speak to, and make sure that they can relate to our brand. Because before you're about to read anything, before you want to buy a product, before you want to have a conversation, you want to make sure you see yourself in that brand. So we went through it's between our visual representation, our colors, our voice and tone, a full refresh of what we like. Especially you can see even in our illustrations, we try to go for a little bit more of an ambiguous look. It's not really labeling or putting anyone in a box. It's really that everyone can be enabled to be better marketers with our product. And on that voice and tone note as well, it's really important for us. I think a lot of brands will quickly accept like a little bit more of a negative tone or a bit of a fear stoking. And what we really want to do in a tone is to make sure that our customers trust us, that we're their allies, and that we're really a comforting, friendly resource for them. So that's been a big push we've had here. And so we have our own bank of stock photography that kind of shows more relatable people. And when you come to our site, you get excited rather than feeling like you're just in another brochure.
Yeah, I think a big part of that too is it makes you stand out in your brand. So for those of you in the audience who maybe are trying to fight for a reason to invest in having custom photography, when we did an audit and we looked at what our competitors were using and what the opportunity was to represent ourselves differently, and the major opportunity came actually in imagery. So it really does relate back to a business need and competitive differentiation. And we get really great response from our customers, not only those who are a part of it, but those who could see themselves being a part of it someday. And I think that's really, I mean, that's just one step. And it is about just taking that initiative. So Stacey, you guys at Bizzabo are doing some awesome work to lead and change the conversation in your industry, which I think makes you guys stand out above anyone else in your space. Can you share just where that started and what you guys have done?
Yeah, of course. So the last few years, we've been releasing a gender and diversity report. So we use a platform to analyze over 60,000 event speakers in 58 countries, over 45 industries, and thousands of events. So we're able to actually dig into the gender diversity gap when it comes to speakers by event type and industry, geolocation, and more. So you can see here, you know, we use these findings and pitch them out, and we were able to get a ton of placement from it. Including the one you see here from Bloomberg. And it's definitely a hot topic right now, and we'll talk more about that in a few slides. But with the data and the press, we're able to shed light on a topic in the industry and not only create awareness, but also a community, which led us to launching our Empower brand. So this year on International Women's Day, we had our first Empower event, which celebrated women in business, marketing, and leadership. We brought together around 100 marketers to discuss not only how to make your event more diverse, but the challenges that they've faced in their career and the initiatives that they had started at their own companies to create more diversity and inclusion and eliminate that gap that exists.
So this is a great example of a way to marry a go-to-market initiative with a thought leadership one, and one that also sheds a light on an industry topic like diversity, because you're using your product data, you're showing that there is a shortcoming with events, and you're able to drive an entirely new conversation that ultimately does raise awareness for the fact that Bizzabo is a technology for events, but it's bigger than that. So I think that that's a great takeaway for anyone who has access to product data and can use that to benchmark where their industry is when it comes to inclusion from their audience. So that's the external view. I also think that there's a really important part of being an inclusive brand, and that's looking internally and making sure that what happens internally backs up what you're showing externally. So Katie, you guys are doing some cool stuff at People.ai. What can you share some of that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's important that we touched on earlier is that you are marketing to a really diverse group of customers, but you're also marketing to your employees. And so you should probably, it's important to maintain that same standard that you deliver to your customer as you do to your employee. They also count as your audience. And so some of the things that we do at People.ai are making sure all hands are inclusive. We have different points of view. We make sure we have a pretty diverse list of presenters. Currently, it's every week, so we're able to see a really broad amount of people and people from different organizations and different levels join us to share about what they're working on and what they're doing. Lunch and Learns, we try to push for having diverse presenters there. And then also events like SKO, we have our first one coming up, and so we want to make sure that we have a variety of perspectives that are included. Less formal means for us too, or team building events. So I think we'll talk about this a little bit more later, but making sure that everybody can do team building. Maybe it's not going to a driving range, but it's going to something that is more inclusive, that is an interest that everyone might be interested in, or also, for example, something that no one is good at, which we have some interesting stories I can cover after this. In terms of validating what you're doing, make sure it resonates with your audience and with your internal employees. Variety of ways you can do this, whether it's pulse surveys, whether it's kind of measuring feedback, asking for feedback. I mentioned pulse surveys, but just kind of talking to people, talking to your team, asking them what works, how things were delivered, how things were received, and clearing it with them. And then last but not least, when you are asking for feedback, be prepared to act on it. I think there's nothing worse than asking for a lot of feedback and then things not changing. And so you want to keep that feedback loop moving.
Yeah, Katie, and I think the other thing that we've seen at PFL is, part of our brand is people, personality, quality, and value. And it's kind of a fun exercise to actually walk around the building and just talk to people and say, this is, what do you think our brand is and what does it stand for? And I think you get interesting stories, and sometimes it also highlights that maybe we aren't doing as good of a job marketing internally. So there's a lot of opportunity for us to get better and better at that, and realizing that we spend a lot of time creating external personas of who we're marketing to and who we're selling to, but we have to realize that we also have internal personas that we need to bring alongside, because at the core of our businesses is really the success is coming from our people internally.
Yeah, your employees know your brand best. Sorry, I just wanted to add that.
Oh, no. I mean, it's even, we're marketers, right? Most of us are working with salespeople who are representing us in the field. So they're not backing up the brand, then it's sort of everything we do is for naught. And so thinking about that outside in perspective, this is just an example. And these are some like check boxes that I think are good measures to take when launching a new initiative. So at On24, we went through a rebrand, and I did all of it and hadn't ran it by our team in the field in our global regions. And this is a case where we use stock photography, but even the divider slides on the PowerPoint template of our pitch deck, we were launching it to the sales team there, and they immediately flagged that the divider slides only had it didn't include enough diversity with Asian business people being featured. And I think that just for them would undermine any presentation that they would give, because it's very clear that it's just a company that doesn't understand the region, doesn't understand who they're talking to. So even something as minor as that is really good to run through and make sure gets feedback from your international team, because no one's trying to ignore it. It just might not be top of mind. And I think the same is true by including millennials and perhaps more junior people on the team, and getting their thoughts on any kind of campaigns or initiatives, because things change, conversations change, meanings change, and it's important that you understand how someone who is early in their career will take what you're trying to say, as well as someone who's more mature. And so I just like to always ask the global team, always ask the junior team, always ask a millennial if what you're saying and doing sounds right. And I think, Katie, you guys have a formal organization for doing that, which is pretty cool. Mine's just a checklist that sits on a Post-it on my desk.
Yeah, it's exciting. We about probably 6 months ago now at this point, we formed a diversity working group, which is a committee that is cross-functional of teams at the company. When I say cross-functional, it's literally people from every single function, from every single level, working together to operationalize, making sure inclusion and diversity is included into our business objectives. And so the person who leads it, Greg, is awesome. He actually is in BizOps. So he has this mindset of making sure it is something that we can operationalize and then start measuring. It's also wonderful to pass things by people in this group and say, hey, does this feel like it resonates with you? Do you feel like this would resonate with your stakeholders? Why or why not? The other quick point I would also make, Tessa, to your earlier point about asking millennials, these are the people that are going to be in the workforce soon, or that are in the workforce and going to be joining the workforce in force really soon as well. And so making sure that your company is appealing to them is something that's going to be critical and pay out over the long term as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's also, customers are another great resource for that. Customer advisory boards are often just to get feedback on product, but it's also it can be a really great breeding ground to get feedback on the different campaigns you're running, content you need. I think, Caroline, you guys do a really good job of using customer feedback to then even shape the content you're putting out there.
Yeah, to kind of bring that up, recently we had our customer advisory board, and to Katie's point earlier, a good chance is to get feedback. You go and you think you're marketing the right things, you're doing the right things, you're rebranding, but it really should be a chance for your customers to speak up and give you that feedback, whether it's, congratulatory or it's something that you need to work on. And so one big thing we did is make sure that it was kind of led by our customers, and they could let us know what they're interested in, what problems they're facing. And it was more of a casual conversation. And then on that note, we made sure that we took this very seriously, and we have multiple documents where we're going through and are these topics that people really want to know about, and informing our marketing strategy going forward based on that in-person feedback we got. And I mean, on the brand note, it's always great. This is a time to really be loyal to the brand you've created and make sure that they get that experience in person. We have digital channels everywhere, but this is a good chance for you to really get in front of your customers, get to know them on a personal level. Again, these are people, and often for us, right, we're marketers marketing to marketers. So you have a lot of good topics to talk about. So it's a good time to create relationships and take their feedback seriously.
Yeah, it's a crowdsourced editorial calendar. That's
exactly. I love it.
I think those are all the foundational principles, that I think we've experienced and gone through. And now we want to move on to some tactical ways that we're executing against that. And looking at that across channels. So we're going to walk through how we brought some of this to life in the past few years with our own marketing campaigns. So the first is at On24, we realized that we were largely focused on what we considered a decision maker. And, I think that something that is hard, it's sometimes hard to do because you get a lot of pressure to always speak to the C-level, always speak to the executive. You always want to up-level your message. You always want to say, your product is really for the highest ranking position. But at the end of the day, the practitioner and the users and those who are in the weeds and in the trenches deserve attention and deserve to be celebrated as well. So what we have at On24 are two different paths, and we've got a few more, but we have a very specific program for CMOs where we get them on a podcast, and we picked podcasts because that medium is so much better for a C-level. But we spotlight a CMO that way, but at the same time, we then spotlight the practitioner within that same company and give them the exact same sort of recognition, and do it through a different channel, and that's a webinar, and that's because that is their bread and butter and daily what they use every day. So that's just an example of how we've carved out specific programs for both personas. I think there's a lot of other more powerful ways to do that. Caroline, you guys have done a great job of looking at sales stage and communicating in that form.
Yeah, definitely. So to kind of talk about what you were saying, I know I looked this up a lot, and what a buying committee now is, anyone will say like 6 to 10 people, and you have a ton of people you need to speak to. And it can be hard to try to talk to everyone, but kind of paying attention to your data and knowing where they're at, who they've talked to thus far, what content they've enjoyed. Also, that includes A/B testing your messaging. So if you honestly care about your audience, you'll take that seriously and you'll kind of test around. But for us, yeah, definitely making sure you segment across all of those different areas is really important, so that we've all been in the situation where you get a message that completely doesn't resonate with you, or the personalization was off, and you take that a little, it kind of brushes you aside from the brand. So you want to make sure that you're taking into consideration all those important data points. And then beyond that, to your point around content, I think ultimately, end of the day, yes, you want to be talking to the C-level. Everyone wants to get in front of that spot, but ultimately you want to be the champion of those using your product and those who really need your help. And so again, hearkening back to what we talk about in our brand, a big thing we focused on is being your coach, basically. Let's help you make sure you can be the best marketer, salesperson, whoever your persona is. And so that honestly, those people will become your champions. So I think it's always important to remember, like, if you're having a conversation with someone, what kind of messaging would they want to hear? So always fact check yourself in that way, for sure.
Yeah, I think that there's just thinking about what does someone want and how do they want to receive it is so important. I think it's really interesting to think about also when you not only speaking to a customer on their terms, but meeting them where they are. And that means that you might need to reach someone in avenues beyond email, avenues beyond digital. And I think sometimes we as marketers get so closed-minded and are thinking, okay, I only can activate this specific channel because that's what, that's just the program. That's what I can measure. That's what's easy to do. PFL has done amazing work. Marni, you guys are leading the way on building out a physical channel to reach and delight your customers and create experiences that coincide with the digital touch points that you're also running.
Yeah, and we actually just did a multi-channel marketing report launch not too long ago, and we surveyed about 600 marketers in the different channels that they were using. And what I found really interesting is the alarming low rate of how many marketers are using, even 7 channels or more. The majority of the companies are using about 3 different channels to reach their audience, which is just becoming less and less effective. And the fact of the matter is our customers are having heightened expectations for how they want to be communicated with. And so you have to look at all of those channels, Tessa. So one of the things that we've experienced is obviously with our integrations on the marketing automation front, and sales-enabled or sales CRM tools, we have now the ability to take all of that behavioral data that we're seeing from our customers, and then also the firmographic data, and be able to actually send them direct mail pieces that resonate with them. And these are a couple of examples that I think are really critical. And I think the assumption is that you don't have to have necessarily a really expensive piece, but you need to be thinking about how do you make it really personal for your audience? How do you add value at every touch point in the marketing campaign? And these are a couple examples that I thought were kind of interesting. So on the lower front, you've got postcards that have the personality. They've got the personal, here's your first name, but it also has where your geographic region is. So that if you receive a postcard and you're in India, I'm not sending you a picture of the Montana mountains, for example. But Salesforce also does it really well, where they have a very good understanding of who their audience is, and they're making sure that the content that they're creating is really tailored to that person.
Yeah, that is awesome. I think there is nothing worse than personalization going wrong and backfiring. And that can just be because we make assumptions or forget that, there are some physical items that a certain subsection of people will use every day, and those will not. I think we had a long conversation about socks, which are all the trend these days, branded socks. And really, I don't, there's not a lot of opportunity for women to wear dress socks, and it is a big man's trend. So, and they're cool, but I think it's things like that. Unisex T-shirts is, do women really want to wear that? Even just looking beyond the typical, bro Silicon Valley, get up gear. So Caroline, you guys did something that was really cool that I thought was personalized, but in a way that was also would appeal to anyone. And I think that that's a hard balance to reach. So what did you guys do? I think it was this past summer, right?
Yeah, definitely. So of course, on the seasonal front, hopefully most people are celebrating summer. So we decided to kind of jump on something that's more experience focused. Obviously, everyone with direct mail or the way you're getting in front of people, you want to make sure it's something they need to use. And while battery packs, et cetera, are always great, we wanted to make sure this is something that's fun and that anyone could use across genders and for families, for singles, like everyone. So it's summertime, we decided to send them a little summer picnic blanket, wine tumblers, lemonade. So in a way, it's kind of good for everyone. And it's also something that they surely will use or at least gift out to someone. So that was kind of our focus, aside from your average T-shirt or, again, socks that maybe you'll wear to bed, but probably not out.
Yeah, I think it's so thinking about the utility of something is really actually the most thoughtful you can be. And it doesn't have to be incredibly expensive. It just needs to be relevant to someone's daily life. So if you can make your brand a part of someone's daily habit, that is nirvana. Yeah, I also think what is so powerful though about using direct mail is you're able to make that physical connection. There is that spark. It's so tangible. It breaks through that digital noise that we are all hearing and inundated with on a daily basis. And so I think another great channel to really show your audience what your brand stands for and make them a part of the experience are physical events. So we're lucky to have Stacy with us, who is an expert on that. And I think that there's no bigger time for your brand to be on stage and to represent something. That also means that there is a lot of risk, right? Because you are in the spotlight and it's an opportunity to make a huge impact, and you want to make sure it's the right one. So Stacy, how can you do that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's really important to highlight that speakers are your event. So you want to make sure that, you have different backgrounds represented on stage to make sure everyone on stage and in the audience feels comfortable. I have an example here, but when we reached out to Andrea Long, who is in charge of global diversity at Twilio, we asked her to be one of our speakers. She pointed out, although the event was very diverse in terms of gender, we didn't have any women of color speaking. And I really, really respected Andrea for calling that out. And it just shows that although we are making progress and we are, keeping this top of mind, we still have a very long way to go when it comes to diversity and inclusion, especially in events.
I was just going to say, and I think it's the first part is admitting it, right? So today we definitely could have done better on making this even more diverse beyond just gender. So I know Felicia, you in the audience mentioned that, and it's absolutely true. And I think it's why dialogues like this are so important. And the good news is there's a solution. I love this, Stacy.
Yeah. At our Empower event that I mentioned a few slides ago, I heard from many panelists how hard it is to find female speakers. And I know Tessa and I have done a few events together now, and we've come across the same issue. So it made me start thinking, maybe Bizzabo needs to put together some kind of, database or speaker, profile that we can use to find speakers and have people that we know want to speak apply to be part of it. So I started doing some research, and I found a company called Badassery. And what they do is they have a curated community of rising leaders in diverse backgrounds. So you're actually able to search a database of speakers of all levels and topics. The speakers go through 3 rounds of interviews before being placed on the site. And then, as if you're trying to fill your panel, you can just go on there, search what you're looking for on a variety of different topics, and you can just book them straight from there. So, we are working with Badassery right now, and I'm very excited to see a platform like this actually come to life.
Yeah, I think it's an amazing resource. And I love that it's actually real people. So everyone watching today, you should apply. I think it's just badassery.com, right? And hopefully we can all see each other on a stage somewhere someday. But it's initiatives like that. It is amazing. And I know I'm already looking at Badassery to source a future speaker. And like I said, what is amazing is also the diversity in the expertise. So oftentimes it's so hard to find different perspectives. So people who are in different stages of their career. And I think sometimes we default to always needing an expert, someone who's at the top, at the pinnacle of their career, when in fact, what's most interesting are those who are still figuring it out. Marni, I feel like you really cracked that code. Actually, coming back to Own It, it was an amazing panel that was different than usual.
It was. And I think when we started to curate, like, who did we want up on our stage and for them to be able to share their experiences, originally we were shooting for people who had a little bit of a bigger title, like VP level. And when we started to look at what's going to resonate with our audience, and and the mix of our audience, I think realizing that we had some emerging marketing leaders that maybe were just very early stage was going to be a huge benefit to the audience. And so we had everything from Katie, who is one of our customers, who is literally, just getting her feet wet with marketing, to a VP of marketing in the conversation. And it was so exciting, and we got such a great response from our audience because it really resonated with everybody in that room. And we realized towards the end of the conference, that we had a lot of pieces of information that we could share with each other. And I think, Tessa, you even kicked off a little interactive session, and you can talk. I can't remember the two questions that you had. What piece of information can you share, and what piece of information can you give? And was that right? And then we passed around the microphones, and I just thought it was a bonding experience and a very eye-opening experience to have that level of diversity in our group.
Yeah, and I think for me, it seemed obvious when we did it, but I also always worry with an event, can you mix titles? Will people come, and will they want to hear from someone who is just a manager? But then you realize the people who you want at your event are at all different levels, and someone who was able to get a promotion from coordinator to manager or whatever it may be, that's just as interesting as the person, and probably more so than the person who's been in the same kind of role for the past 10 years. Because, it's those changes, it's that disruption, it's that progress that I think is where interesting perspective comes, not necessarily from maintaining what you've got. So that was a big lesson learned for me. I know I'm at our next event, we will definitely have, I'm not going to be afraid from mixing titles. So now thinking about, I think that those are all just some lessons we've learned with some channels. And we wanted to recognize that there are some brands out there who are doing some amazing work already, and wanted to share a few of those to look at. And, when you're doing research or you're building the case to perhaps start some initiative and make that a part of your brand and your thought leadership initiative in 2020. So Marni, you guys work with one of the companies that is truly pioneering what it means to make your brand stand for something, Salesforce.
Exactly. Yeah. And these are big shoes to fill because it's something that their brand stands for, and they put a lot of resources into it. And so they have entire divisions that really just focus on inclusion and diversity, and they take it all the way, every aspect of their marketing, their education, down to the physical pieces that they have. They put those resources into it. And like I said, it's one of those things that you want to look at these brands and hold them as kind of the pinnacle of what you can get to. But at the end of the day, if you just start, I think that's, the most important part. But Salesforce does an amazing job at really soliciting from their audience how they even want to be identified as. So they've done a remarkable job.
Yeah, I think, though, to your point, Salesforce is probably, check out their website. I'm sure a lot of you probably are already aware, but yeah, there's a ton of inspiration to draw from. But I think that there are also little ways that you can make progress and also make waves, get press, get attention for something that, again, has nothing to do with your product. Stacey, I love these examples from these, just in these events and the policies that they have.
Yeah, so Andrea Long, who we just talked about a minute ago, she manages Twilio After Hours, which is an event series that she runs all over the world, actually. And it provides a place for minorities in tech to network and talk about how to move the industry forward when it comes to diversity. So that's really been an amazing initiative by Andrea. And then Shop Talk, which I'm very familiar with because I've sponsored numerous years in previous companies. But they made a huge splash a few weeks ago when they announced 100% female speaker lineup for 2020. They received a ton of press for it, and I really think they set the bar pretty high when it comes to diversity with event speakers. And then lastly, SaaStr. Bizzabo is actually the diversity and inclusion sponsor for SaaStr Annual this year. And the SaaStr also runs on Bizzabo. They have a very strict policy when it comes to the diversity of their speakers. You can see here that they do not allow manels, which are all male panels. And they'll even go as far as to say if a panel is not diverse enough, they'll just drop it and they will replace the speakers. So it's really interesting to see a lot of these really legacy, huge events in the industries really make a push towards diversity when it comes to speaking.
Yeah, I mean, those are just little. It's not little, it's actually huge, but at the end, but it's not like they had to create an entire brand campaign, or like Dell. Here's another one to check out, the Dell Women's Entrepreneurship Network. They're building an entire community for women entrepreneurs, and they commission research, and it is a part of their brand because they believe that women are business owners and need to be technology users, so they've committed to that. So that's an example of something that has been created that has an entire staff behind it, or simply like SaaStr, you can make an amazing impact simply by just making a commitment to having those you put on stage and highlight to be diverse. So I think that that's a great segue into our wrapping up this webinar with some of our thoughts on how you can get started. Marni, can you sum it up for us?
Yeah, I mean, I think, everything that we've touched on today, you have to start with just being very intentional. So what is it that what you want your brand to stand for? Does that resonate internally? Does it resonate externally? Do you have the appropriate level of data to even start with it? So I think starting by just taking an audit of your company, I think we can tend to go heads down in our marketing sometimes and just start executing versus really taking a step back and saying, what is it that what problem are we trying to solve? What solution are we trying to get to? So I think it's just, take the first step is the most important piece, and running an audit internally to identify where the gaps are and then start to fill those gaps.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just one little step. It's just calling an attention. It's starting an event. It's starting a networking group at your company. It's diversifying the images that you use on your website or in your PowerPoint. I think there's little things that can happen and that you can make happen on your own, and then hopefully eventually build an entire sub-brand like Bizzabo has done around it, or initiative. So I'm so happy just to know that this is something that obviously all of you feel is important, like we do. And I think that what we have committed to do collectively as brands is we are going to continue the Own It conversation. After San Francisco, we've decided that we're going to bring this event to other cities. So if you go to the right, you can see and sign up and get a save the date for where we'll be in our next city. These are events that are are inclusive to all, but are for anyone who wants to have a conversation around putting different people in a leadership position and driving for change. So please check that out. But with that, I know we're at time. So thank you all for joining us today. Make sure to check out the resources widget. That's where you'll see a copy of these slides and other examples. You'll see links to examples that we talked about and referenced, a chance to learn more about us and what our companies do. And like I said, we'll keep the conversation going because that's really what's most important. So thanks again, everyone. Really appreciate you taking the time with us today. We'll hopefully talk to you soon and see you in the next city where we have Own It. Have a great day.